Number one thing I would say always is a great service, a great offering. There's nothing which beats a great offering as in a product or a service. I mean, that's the easiest way to build loyal customers is to have something which is invaluable. Number two is really going out of our way to take care of them.
Warning: Damian Andrews' growing revenue and profit, if implemented, will put more money in your pocket. Please use with caution.
Welcome to Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit with international speaker and revenue and growth specialist, Damian Andrews. This is your source for practical, usable, and simple action steps that you can do every day to put more money in your pocket. And now, the host of Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, Damian Andrews.
And the crowd cheers wildly to the trumpeting blast of elephants sliding through eyes of needles. This is Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, the program that deals with all things that put more cash in your pocket. This is the show that handles your revenue riddles, profit puzzles, operational oddities, and culture conundrums. I am the one, the only Damian Andrews, and on today's show is the amazing and wonderful Raj Goodman Anand. Now, Raj is the founder of Goodman Lantern, a team of content creators specializing in a variety of different languages and software development services that help business better sell and grow faster. Plus, he's on a mission to help increase the number of women working within the tech industry, and he's also an engineer by profession. He has founded 3 startups, raised capital, and taken one venture from zero to acquisition. Welcome, Raj. Pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Damien. Thanks for the introduction, and lovely to have you. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me here.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I was looking at your background and the work that you've done, and I'm just fascinated by the amount of effort that you've put in, the different things that you've done. Let's cut straight to the chase. When you've founded these businesses, what was the motivation? What drove you to do that?
I believe it's different every time. So my first business, which I started, was just after university, and I was pursuing a PhD in AI, and someone told me about MySpace. And if I see a good opportunity, I can't resist myself. For people who don't know what MySpace is the social networks for the old folks. So people who prehistoric, before Facebook. And when I came across MySpace, I was like, I could build this in probably a couple of weeks. So I sat and I coded the entire school in 3 weeks, worked like 20-hour days and stuff, for example. So then I had that. I didn't know what I was doing. I just finished a degree in engineering and AI. So I went to get some scholarship to go and do a mini MBA program to learn about selling and marketing. Then I loved marketing and made it into a white label social media software for large companies who work with their customers. So I think that was one case, and I started another business which was in the event space for hen parties. People, I guess in Australia and the UK might know hen parties.
Yes.
Hen and stag parties they bring the economy, or they raise about £2 billion every year in the UK alone. Wow. It's a huge market. So we started working on that. Again, very content focused. Then I worked for a corporate for a bit because I was itching to kind of try something different. And I took them some 7.5 million to 45 million revenue, the back of content and SEO and thought leadership content. And that was the initial idea, which led me to Goodman Lantern. And that's where I started to really think about, okay, can we do content creation for B2B companies across various high-tech industries like defense, manufacturing, telecoms, fintech. And that's where we are today. basically I learned from my roles and opportunities to kind of look at new potential areas to do the business. And that's where I think, as an entrepreneur, one has to be opportunistic and has to be ready to kind of try something different and be ready to put some money where a mouth is and try it out.
What I'm hearing from what you're saying there is, for you, you've mentioned sales, you mentioned marketing, and then from that perspective as well, for any business to be successful long term, you really need to identify a sustainable, profitable market. So when you talked about, the old people's business, I'm going to use that terminology. Sorry for it being offensive to anyone but I'm past half a century, so I can say that. And then you mentioned about the hens party, which you said it's a $2 billion industry. So that's a massive market. And then you mentioned about content creation for B2B. Well, again, an area where you might have a number of companies that are very good at their speciality, but they might not be good at the soft skills, which is the case. So was that something specifically that you identified consciously, that these were highly profitable, big markets, sustainable markets?
Yes and no. I feel a lot of times I get involved in businesses which are typically my own itch, or I know people who have that as a challenge. I would say I'm very B2B focused. The hen party company as well, whereas most people think that, well, that's sold to the end consumers. Actually, we sold majority of our services to existing companies who would then resell those to their customers. So I would say 60% was B2B, 40% was B2C, but then eventually became almost like 80% B2B. And B2B tends to be the area which I focus on. And I think I really enjoy that because it's a big opportunity in B2B. If you do it right and you work hard in the first few years, you set up a very sustainable company without having to invest, 100 million or 200 million or maybe a billion, for example, like some other VC companies. So I think there's an opportunity. Obviously, the more it's planned better and thought about initially, the better it kind of goes eventually. So I always try to think about how do I plan better, make sure I bring in the right management team, leadership team, so I can then build the company up and then hand over to them and then say, okay, next venture.
So from that perspective, you mentioned B2B and B2C, you've done both. My understanding is that they're very different marketing. Very different marketing is required for both of those. Can you talk us through the difference between the B2C and B2B businesses and how they operated?
Yeah, sure. So obviously B2C stands for business to customer. Business to business is B2B. Typically with B2B marketing, it tends to be something where most traditional B2B companies will not be that keen on marketing. It's basically the basic website is sufficient. Bit of cold emailing templates would be all right. LinkedIn, and then that's sufficient. Maybe a presentation or two to add to it, and that's your marketing deck, your marketing collateral. But in the recent years, with the growth of search engines and digital overall, that's changed quite a bit. Today, the internet, social media, now AI, has brought in opportunities to actually promote and sell your company online. Today, we all buy online. The first thing we do to kind of search anything is Google it, or maybe ChatGPT it now. It depends on which era we belong to, but most of us are thinking in that direction. And obviously, what powers Google is also AI as well. So eventually, we're all using AI in one way or the other. So we're looking to find companies we want to work with as a business, if that was our intention. And to find them, they need to optimize themselves to be visible to us and to appeal to us. So there are two bits over there: visibility and thought leadership to appeal to the end buyer. That's the pillar of B2B marketing, is to how do you become more visible and become a thought leader. And both can be achieved through digital marketing, through primarily the website. which is the focal point for any business today. It's the website. Now, that's the way we would do it. So, really get the website ranked really well on Google, optimize it for high visibility, then use social media to get more people's attention and, make it like a FOMO effect. Move to B2C. B2C is also very reliant on digital today, where we buy our stuff on Amazon, for example. We get influenced by Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and you go buy some more stuff there. But there's a big influencer market within the B2C, more than the B2B market. And when it comes to selling, there are platforms which already exist, especially with products, for instance. Amazon exists today. They have a big market share. And in various countries, they're different, like Alibaba, for example, they exist as well in different markets. So it's all about understanding what market you belong to and how do you sell to them. But influencer market, social media is super important in B2C. In B2B is important as well. I would say primarily LinkedIn and maybe Twitter is important. But in B2C, these big influential marketing opportunities within TikTok, Instagram, Facebook play a vital role, coupled with the idea of these big platforms like Amazon who control the market for the majority of players. So there's a small difference there. And to launch B2C, the investment required typically tends to be much larger because you build a brand and then go. But B2B, you can start small, start to get small customers initially and then build up and bootstrap quite easily. And that's what I love about B2B. You can bootstrap fairly easily. In B2C, it's much harder.
Yeah. So from that perspective as well, as I understood it, when we're talking about the marketing side of things, you've got, as you said, you've got these different platforms. They're slightly different, but at the end of the day, you need a website and you need to build a brand. And as you said, from B2B, you're really looking at being a thought leader. And it sounds like from B2C, you really need to focus on the building your brand as such. From that perspective, we take it to the next step of sales. How do you approach sales differently, B2B and B2C? If I understand correctly, sales B2C is more an emotional decision, whereas B2B, there's a lot more thought that goes into, is this going to impact my bottom line? There's more decision makers in there. So how does that affect the sales process?
Yes, a good question there, Damien. I would say with B2B, there are multiple stakeholders involved in making a purchase. So especially with larger purchases which are made, you would have a SME, subject matter expert in the industry. You would have a manager, maybe a CFO, maybe a CEO, depending on the sales level or how important or expensive the item is. So it can take a long time to get the sale going. So it could take it's not abnormal to kind of hear people say 6 months to 1 year for a large sale. So it's challenging. And in that process of 6 months to 1 year, there could be a time when something you said to the various stakeholders doesn't resonate with them and it can just fall flat. So there's a big risk involved there when you start to sell to a B2B. In B2C, typically it's an emotional sell, typically to one buyer, and for the sales size, ticket item is much smaller. The impact is much smaller, which is a pro and a con. The pro is that you have multiple customers you're influencing. So if one drops off, it still is going to be okay. Typically in B2B, the size of each order is much bigger. So each time you lose a customer or gain a customer, the impact could be pretty big depending upon what you sell. Is it a whale? Is it like, for example, a $5 million product or service you offer? Or is it like a rabbit or an ant, which is like sort of $100 product, right? So that depends as well. How do you sell and what do you sell and who you sell to? Some industries are regulated, so it takes in more effort and time to pass those regulatory body decisions. For instance, like financial industry is regulated quite heavily in most countries. To sell to the financial industry, it takes much more effort. You need to make sure you regulate it as well, and that takes more effort. So it's all about risk and reward. in B2B. The bigger the reward, bigger the risk, bigger the time required. In B2C, I wouldn't say it's easier. I wouldn't say at all that's easy, but there is a requirement for a mass campaign, a broad opportunity. If have done correctly, there's a lot to be won across multiple stakeholders, but they're all individual people, typically.
Wonderful. And from that perspective, when you're looking at that, whether you're already existing or even starting up, particularly when you're starting up, actually, when we're talking about barriers to entry, if you're building a car manufacturing plant, as we know, there's one very famous one that's now out there with a certain Musk has been creating, but it was a massive barrier to entry to get something like that up and running. What about, and I know it is industry specific, but generally the difference between a B2C and a B2B, is there any particular barriers to entry that hinder being able to get into the market? You did mention, for example, B2B, if I heard correctly, that you needed to be a thought leader. Is that a barrier to entry? And how would you overcome those type of barriers to entry?
Well, it's very interesting because Elon Musk actually, to build Tesla, I read somewhere that he actually created battery offerings for many businesses. And that's how he built the muscle to build electric vehicles in the first place. So he was doing B2B first to become B2C. But the reality is B2C is cash intensive. It is a big risk as well. So you need to do a lot. You need to build a product, build the brand, you need to build the offering, provide a platform to sell that offering as well. You need to have either vendors like showrooms in the case of cars, or online stores, for instance, who will become partners, or maybe retail stores where you can actually sell the item. There's a lot of work required. The barrier to entry for B2C, from what I see from people who I know do B2C quite often, is it requires a lot of cash to launch that product and the offering.
Mm-hmm.
That's after you build the product. So if you say you have a product in B2B and B2C, and you have a product already in B2B, you can get it to market with a relatively small brand. But in B2C, the brand has to be there. You need to have influencers there to really have a good understanding of the market and a market share to kind of sell more. This is why in B2C, when you have these big P&Gs, for example, the world who own brands, they can launch multiple brands one after the other, and they have the market distribution already there. They can launch stuff very quickly. But to build a distribution network initially, it's pretty challenging, very expensive.
And so from that perspective, how do you build that brand for B2C? How do you build that brand if you've just got a product there? I mean, to build a brand, do you need to be out there selling it? Do you need to have that? How do you do that? How do you build a brand at the same time, have a new product, get it out there?
It's just like jumping off the cliff and having the path of a plane, and you assemble the plane as you're falling off the cliff. That's what the short answer is.
Fair enough. I love that. Sorry, but it is. I'm just wondering from that perspective, because there is a lot of people out there, and I know you see a lot of the ads on social media. Do this and you'll be a millionaire overnight. But it doesn't work that way. Is the common statement is that it takes 10 years to make an overnight success. From your perspective, when we're talking about on that road to success, when you started out, what were a couple of the common problems? You've started 3 businesses. Were there some common problems that you encountered, and how did you learn to solve those?
Great question, Damien. I would say the biggest challenge for any business is a team. How do you build a great team? Because if you have a great team you can rely on, that's like 50% of the battle won.
Mm-hmm.
Because great teams can fix products, can build products, can build services, can redo services, for example. So the team is the most important part, I would say. Number 2 for me is understanding the demand and supply, or the product market fit. I often feel that most innovators build stuff which there's no demand for,
Mhm.
or there's not enough demand for that product, or especially at the price. So you can build the first time they actually built a Sony Walkman, they
Mhm.
weren't sure if there's a market for it. You had to build a market. But
Mhm.
what do you price it at? Is there demand for it? Is it ready to kind of launch it? For example, Spotify or YouTube, or both of these are primarily B2C products. And when they launched, the market wasn't right. It cost, I remember, insane amount of money. I think it was like $1 million per day or per month or per week to host the videos for YouTube at some point. And today we hear something similar with ChatGPT, how much they spend on their hosting, for instance. Spotify, when they launched Spotify, there were all kinds of challenges with getting rights to the songs to host it on their platform. So it's
Mhm.
really hard to understand. We're building something innovative and cutting edge. We don't know if the market is ready for it.
Mhm.
Either you're too early or too far behind, and or the market prices you out. You just can't sell the product at the same price, for instance. So how do you make a profit and you sell a product and it works at the right time? I mean, there's a lot of different parts, moving parts to a business to fix really quickly in the start. This
Yeah.
is why they say that the visionary or the entrepreneur, if they go from the business dies. But if you have somebody else in the business, if they leave, it'll still survive. We find somebody else to replace it. But the visionary needs to have the vision to build something which is going to have the market, the offering, the innovation, the kudos, all that put together in one brand pretty much at the beginning of the offering, and it's going to start to grow exponentially. So it's a lot of things happening at the same time.
I love that you mentioned that about that visionary person, because a couple of friends who are venture capitalists, and one of the key things they look at is what has this person done before? Have they got the as you said, kudos to actually do this? Because it is a big factor. And from that perspective, with the people staying with that theme, in today's world, because the demographics have changed, we know that we always knew it was coming. We just didn't do anything about it. But the baby boomers are all retiring. So the workforce is disappearing. How do you find, when you say a team is 50% of likelihood of your success, how do you find those right people, and what are the key skills that you need to have as the leader to attract that talent?
I think there are a lot of different things I'd say are important. But for me, the number one thing is coachability. They can be coached to become a better version of themselves. Are they open to the idea of that? And are they happy to adapt to the changing requirements of the industry? And things are changing every day, especially in today's world. Things are changing much faster than before. So
Yeah.
it might have come in writing on paper, and now they're doing Word documents, and they're doing it Google Docs. Suddenly they have a AI tool doing all the stuff for them, and they have to be open to the idea of accepting that change and going with it. People who have a can-do attitude are the people I like to hire in my team, who
Mm.
are happy to jump right into it and figure out the way. They're happy to jump off the cliff and assemble a plane, as I mentioned earlier. That's
Mm.
something that's really important for me. I feel like that's what makes a great team member. Often even bring in people who are ex-entrepreneurs. I think they are fantastic people because they have felt the highs and lows in their lives, and that's so impressive because they know what it is to when you're low, how low you feel, and they know when you do something great, how good it feels. So that balance is required throughout. And when I've seen that my leadership team right now is full of entrepreneurs. They all run the companies before. They run cafes. They run work in construction business before. They've tried it. Some of them made it. Some of them didn't make it, but they still want to keep growing their knowledge and their growth. And I think they become great leaders, and they become great members of the team. So I always bring them in. They don't know the subject matter. I train them, I get them involved, and within like a few days, they're ready to go. But I feel like those people make great team members for me.
Yeah. And how do you manage that change within an organization? As you said, you're assembling this plane as you're falling off the cliff. And there's constant change there. And from that perspective, I mean, my understanding is only two things people ever complain about, and that's change and the way things are. So how do you manage that from that perspective? How do you manage the people when things aren't going very well? Is there any tips there that will help motivate people, that keep them motivated? Is it a vision? Is it your raw energy? What is it that actually helps keep them motivated and upbeat and moving forward?
Yeah, great question, actually, Damien. So I struggled with that quite a bit. In my 9 year of business in Goodman Lantern, our current company, the first 5 years I was just drifting. I wasn't sure where I'm going with the business. I didn't have a clear plan. But then I came across two things. Both sound very similar, but they're very different.
Mhm.
One, I came across EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and
Mhm.
number two was EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Mhm.
Completely two different organizations, both from the US, but very different. One is primarily a members club, which is 17,000 plus members across the world, each entrepreneur doing $1 million plus in revenue. That's EO. EOS is Entrepreneurial Operating System, which I came across about 2 years back via a friend in EO.
Mhm.
And they educated us on this thing called vision traction. And it's a whole framework for EOS,
Mhm.
which really helps to build a operating system for our business so we know where we are going. And with that, we have a weekly meeting, weekly plans. We have rocks, which are 3 month plans. We have a 1 year plan. We have a 3 year plan with
Mhm.
10 year plan. So we understand business is kind of going, what we have to hit to kind of achieve those goals. We have a number for everything. Is
Mhm.
before it was just like, okay, well, let's try to hit that number. That'll be great. But now we have a clear goal for ourselves. That really helps us to be aligned every time.
So from that perspective, it sounds like the transition for you happened was when you found, I'm going to use the word coach, but I'm using the coach term very loosely. And I'm using the analogy when you look at someone like Roger Federer or LeBron James, pick your sport, whoever's excelling in there. They all, even though they're the best at what they do, they still have a coach. And from what I've seen in a lot of businesses, people are trying to wing it. They're trying to go it alone. Is that, I know it's probably a rhetorical question, but can you expand on that and how a person makes that shift from thinking I've got to do it all myself, because you kind of also want to protect your capital as well. There's that mindset of going, oh, I don't want someone to take my idea. What I don't think people realize is how much effort goes into getting that idea up, so no one's going to take it. But can you explain that mind shift you went through from doing it yourself to then getting the involvement of other people to guide you?
Yes, happy to. I would say in the beginning of Goodman Lantern, I had a very closed mind. So I was looking at just one idea, one opportunity. It was all about myself. But the day I realized that there's an opportunity which is bigger and better, and for that we need the team, that's when I started to think about the big shift.
Mhm.
I believe that to build something substantial which makes a big impact, it requires multiple people. Can't do it alone. There is this big change or talk about solopreneurs. These are individuals who are running the company, but even they have uh, teams of VAs and team members helping them out. They could be the face of their brand. There's obviously Gary Vaynerchuk. There's Neil Patel in marketing. They're all out there talking about stuff, but then they have a huge team in the hundreds helping them out, and
Mm.
that's how they can grow their companies better. So it doesn't. It takes a lot of effort to build a something meaningful, and that needs teams. got different roles in the company. Then you need to have the four cornerstones of a company ready and set to go, who understand sales, marketing, operations, finances, and they can help you with those bits. And I don't have the skills. And I think if I don't surround myself with the smartest people, if I'm the smartest person in the room in my company, something is wrong. And you bring in people better than me every time. So I often say, be the dumbest person in the room in your company. That's the way to build a good company. If you have smarter people than you, it's going to be a great company for sure.
That sounds like that's a bit of ego management there as well, going, hey, it's not about me. It's about where we're going. Is that the mind shift?
It is. So it's about servant leader mindset, whereby I'm serving my team. My only job is to serve my team, to make sure they are happy and they're fulfilled. And then when they're happy and fulfilled, they will bring in the right requirements of people, skills to get the job done. And I think it's about a leader being a servant, and that's super important. I think a lot of times when you look at ministers or politicians, the ones who really embrace the idea of serving their country and serving their nation, they they become they are great leaders. The ones who are cocky or say, well, this is all about me, 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 they they have a term and then they leave and no one cares about them anymore.
And from that perspective, and this is something I kind of disagree with, because there's a lot of out there at the moment is, saying you don't know. I don't know. And I have a number. I'm a big pop culture reference fan, and there's a scene in the movie U-571 with Harvey Keitel and Matthew McConaughey just after the ship's blew. Well, their sub's blown up and they're on the enemy sub. Captain's died and Matthew McConaughey's taken over. He was a 2OC. And they're sitting down together, and Harvey Keitel says to Matthew McConaughey, he says, "Can I speak freely, sir?" And he says, "Yeah, of course, Chief." He says, "Don't you ever say to the crew what you just said, I don't know. Those words will kill a crew. You're the captain. You always know whether you do or don't." Now, and what I'm taking from that, as you said, don't be the smartest person in the room, which I 100% agree with. But as a leader, my understanding is you should always know where you're going. You should always have that motivation. Is that, the line that we draw? It's like we have lots of people around us as leaders that give us the information we need, but we still need to be the captain of that ship, knowing where we're going.
Yes, to some extent, yes. I think it's also good to be vulnerable with a team as well and be open to say that, well, I don't know this yet, but I will find out for you. Well, I will go out and I will discover for you what the opportunities are, why the sales have suddenly increased, why they've decreased, why there's a certain shift towards this market or those opportunities. It's my job to find out for them. So I will. This is what if I'm not doing the actual operations of the company, I'm not involved in that, then what is my job? My job is to find facts and to find opportunities for the team, which are bigger in nature. And so that's what I'll be doing on the side. So that said, I think at the end of the day, the big opportunity here is to really understand what people in leadership teams should be, and I think they should be visionaries. Visionaries will not always have a vision which will guide them towards the end path, but they'll be one who will seek the vision, who will find the opportunity, who will help the team to figure out when they get stuck in different challenges that, well, don't worry, I'm here for you, I'll help you out. If I don't know how to solve myself, I'll find somebody else to help you out with this.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that answer. That's the premise of where we're getting to. There's always a way forward that you're going. There's always a solution. It's not, we can't do this, we can't solve this. From that perspective as well, big companies have resourcing issues. Smaller companies are obviously more fragile because they don't have the raw capital to rely upon. Take Apple, for example. The amount of cash it's got in the bank is massive, so it has wiggle room if things don't go well. But even then, you still need to be allocating resources in an intelligent way. Is there certain areas that a business should focus on, particularly someone that's starting up, in the allocation of resources? Should it be on sales or marketing or product design? How should it allocate its resources?
But for me personally, I'm a big believer in selling. I think sales is the lifeline for businesses, because cash is king and the queen. You have to respect it. You have
Sound
to
like my dad.
allow. Say what? Sorry.
You sound like my dad. He's always cash
Yeah,
is king. Cash is king. Is what he says.
cash is king. It makes sense because it, the second biggest cause of businesses dying is they don't have enough cash. So even if they have a vision, they don't have the ammunition to run the show. It's gonna fold. There's no other way. So cash is important, and I feel like everything is, if you think about things around cash. So I take an action which is going to help build more cash reserves for the company. That's the way I'll look at stuff. So, for example, if cash is the most important part for the business, then the next most important part to get the cash is the sales. So let's think of sales. Like, how are we going to do sales? I often say that the founder should sell. Like, founders should always sell, because when the founders know how to sell for the first time, when they sell the first few products or services, they understand the opportunity and where are the gaps, and how can you create better teams or better products, for example. So the first 10, 20 sales in any business I've ever done, I did myself. And I think that's super important. It's a great way to build more resilient entrepreneurs, in my opinion. So I'm not a salesperson. I'm an engineer. So I was not like I was born to sell. But now the passion I have for what I do, I can say, like, I can sell anything. You ask me to sell content, I can sell content. Back in the day, I used to sell events, we sell events. So it's a passion which talks, and people can see the passion very quickly. So sales is important. What helps sales is marketing. So how do you build the marketing, as in the website potentially? That's the most important showcase for the company, the brand, the presentation decks, and maybe for e-commerce, thinking about the e-commerce platform, for example, as well. But then what do you sell? Well, that's the most important part, which is the offering. So what I did really well in the past, and that's what allowed me to continue to do bootstrapping, is the idea of selling concepts or ideas upfront. So instead of having it ready on day one, can I sell the idea in? Typically, I will do that without even having a name for the company. I'll find a potential buyer, and I'll say, well, this is what we can offer you. Well, what is the cost? Okay, let me go back home. And that day, I'll build the website, the brand, the marketing, all in one day. The next day, I will have not the offering itself, but like a introduction to the problem, top of the funnel, basically the introduction to the challenge they're currently facing. How can we help them out? And then make sure that they understand what can we do to help them out. If they say yes, then we go and find out how to build this thing. Then we come back with that solution for them. This is not always possible in B2C, but in B2B, it happens all the time. In fact, even B2C as well, I've done this before as well. The events company, I first went into a company to sell them the idea, then found the suppliers to deliver the actual events. And that's what I always do. I think people should to think about selling as the most important skill of an entrepreneur, to always be able to go out there and sell, because you're always selling, whether you're trying to get a new partner, a life partner, whether you're trying to get
the kids to do the homework,
kids to do homework, or you're trying to entry into a restaurant or a club. It's always a sales negotiation. So selling is, I think, is really important for every entrepreneur. It should be the basic entry level skill required for every business person, I feel.
So from that perspective, it sounds like what you're doing there is you're testing the market to see if there is a market for what you're offering. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's absolutely correct, Damien. So I often look at the market in sales, but also I would, also, for example, run ads on Google or Facebook to see the market, and also how big is the market? How quickly will they buy? If I present them with the ad, will they click on it and send an inquiry straight away? Or will they be on the fence and say, it's interesting, but not today?
How much tougher is it now in the social media space I was reading a report that was saying if you put a post on Twitter, it's gone, effectively gone within 2 hours. LinkedIn, I think, was a day. YouTube, obviously, if you have your own channel, that it stays there. But going into other people's feeds, again, roughly a day. Facebook is ridiculous, something like 2 hours as well. How difficult is it now to actually get that awareness, that marketing side of things? And is there any way to actually improve the probability of success?
I agree that all the social media platforms, you have to be on the case, current, but often selling is not only about being able to sell the offering one time, but to have repeat customers.
Yeah.
So if you get one Facebook post in in front of somebody who buys from you, the mission is not just to sell them that offering one time. It's about repeat customers, and they often talk about this thing called lifetime value of the customer versus cost to CAC, which is customer acquisition cost, and that should be at least 3:1. So if I spend $100 to get the customer, I should at least get $300 from them in the lifetime of the customer. That's where I think about stuff. So yes, it's well, is it easier or harder? I would say it's become easier, only because think about a time when building a product and experimenting was so difficult. Only the biggest companies could actually do it. Today, literally anybody can build a company. You can launch products. You can offer stuff on Amazon. You can build a B2B company, it takes more time and effort. You can bootstrap it. You can do consulting on the side, and then build a company in the evenings. There's multiple options. There is a variety of services and products you can sell to people, to consumers. And things like AI is just making life easier.
Yeah. AI is becoming very, very useful. I use it a lot myself, although I think the term intelligence is stretching the point a little bit. I think it's a nice research tool, but I don't think it's very intelligent. But that aside, from the perspective of what you talked about there, you mentioned about the lifetime value of the customer and repeat customers. I mean, if you've already got the customer, then it's very low cost to actually stay in contact with them and get the sale if you manage it well. And adding to that, getting referrals as well is even, an easy word of mouth is free advertising. What systems have you used to actually maximize the lifetime value of the customer and also encourage referrals?
Number one thing I would say always is a great service, a great offering. There's nothing which beats a great offering as in a product or a service. I mean, that's the easiest way to build loyal customers, is to have something which is invaluable. Number two is really going out of our way to take care of them, to really make sure that they are happy with where we are and what we offer them. One thing that I do in my company is to make sure that the customer is super happy. We actually ask them to fill in a NPS score of 10. So what was the score of a service? How can we improve it? And we go out of our way to take care of our customers. So if you promise them X, we will always deliver X plus Y. We will, like our team members, one of the big things in our company is we are 80% plus women in our company. And a big part of that is a mindset of taking care of our team. Take care of your team, then they take care of their customers really well. So we'll go out of our way. Say, for example, they come on a call, they're struggling with something, some concepts, some ideas. Most people will say, why don't you go away and learn about it and come back? We'll say, no, listen, let's stay on the call for a bit longer. Let's go through the challenges you have currently. Let us help you solve these problems for you so you can understand what is the issues. When you solve those issues, then go further with that and work closely with the company. So I think effectively what's happening here is if you treat our customers correctly, we offer them a good offering, we price in the right way, they want to stay with you. Because at the end of the day, it's not B2C, it's not B2B, it's B2B, person to person. If the person feels good, they will stay. If they feel uneasy, they feel uncomfortable, they will leave eventually.
I love that. And taking it further, I know the show's called Growing Revenue and Profit, but I'm a big believer that there's much more to being successful and financially profitable than just the dollars side of things. So beyond the financial success, what other measures do you use to determine the impact and success of your business?
Yeah, for me, my life changed. How many years back was it now? About 7 years back, my wife went through a major health challenge. And for me, that changed my perspective on life from all about the money to making an impact, leaving a legacy. So when I think about why I'm doing what I'm doing today, legacy is a very important part of it. And when I say legacy, the first step in that legacy is to identify what the legacy is going to be. What is it going to be that we leave behind?
Mm.
Because I'm in technology and innovation, and I saw that as I was growing up, I grew up in Middle East and India. I noticed that a lot of the times women never made it through to their courses. That's true not only in the Middle East and India, but also in the UK, where I spent 20 odd years. That women don't do a lot of technology and marketing. With the technology, especially, there's not enough women in technology. And I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I want to make sure that she comes up in a fair economy, fair opportunity at workplace. So I said, I'm going to build a company around the idea of women empowerment in technology and marketing. So all the women can have a fair opportunity to grow their careers. And there's no men versus women. We all go together. So just talking about this mission, my company embraces that. That's why it's 80% plus women. That's why we talk about women empowerment as part of our company's mission.
I love that so much. And from that perspective, I know you've got to run soon. So to wind up, let's jump in the Wayback Machine, but flick the dial the other way. So we're in that DeLorean, Doc Brown's DeLorean, hitting 88 miles an hour. And we've set the year to 100 years in the future. Well, let's say 200 years in the future to make sure, because healthcare, you might live another 100 years. So I'm going to go beyond that. Let's take it 200 years. And you're looking back and people, so from that perspective, 200 years in the future, how would you like to see the world has been impacted by what your company has done, what this baby that you've started, it's gone on, continued on into the future, and you're looking back and going, that's the real impact that I really wanted to see. What would that be?
For me, it's going to be that there will be less. There will be a fair society, is where I see myself. Yesterday, my wife asked me to go and watch Barbie, the new movie in the cinemas, and there's a good message behind it. Actually, it's about talking about the guys who build Barbie. It's things called Mattel, and all the guys who run the business are actually men in the boardrooms, and they're talking about like how a female brand is built by these guys in the boardrooms, and it occurred to me that actually when you have somebody in dominance in a particular industry or sector or in the stage of life, for example, you have more of those kind of people in the business. And so when you have a diversity in business, when you have diversity in workplace, when you have male, female, white, black, brown, pink, whatever, you might have everybody together, actually the businesses are much more profitable, they're much healthier, and there are more better ideas, innovation going on. So I hope that I can add a dot to the innovation. Just a small little bit of my flavor to say, well, I help to build a fair society, especially for women in technology and marketing, and help the innovation in work as well as life, so that people can have a fair work-life balance. I'm big on remote working. I want to see men and women both work from home or from work. They choose where they want to work from. I think you should have the opportunity and the option to do that anywhere they want. And I've embraced this 10, 15 years back when people didn't even know what remote working was. It was called e-working, or I don't know, teleworking, or whatever it was called back then. So I feel like that's what I stand for. And I hope that more and more people will embrace that. And I know in 20 years time from now, we'll go back to what we used to do, which was to work from home. It's only the industrial revolution that we all start to work from factories and offices, so that we all work from home. So with AI and technology, we're going back to the same world we knew before.
I love that. Raj, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. There's so much wisdom. I'd love to do a follow-up interview at some point in the future if you have time, because I've got so many more questions I'd like to ask. But I love the work you're doing, and I love the impact that you're aiming to have. I just connect to that so much. I just think it's important to have that society where we live and work equally and share it and contribute and help each other to move forward. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show. But before you go, is there one nutshell, one key wisdom, one thought, one takeaway that you would like to leave the audience with?
I'd say it all looks very difficult and challenging at first, but the only way to figure out what might work for us is just go and do it. That's why Nike says just do it, because it's all about just doing it. That's the only way to know if it's going to work or not. So just go and do it.
Fantastic, Raj. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show. Wish you every success. I'm really excited to see how your business evolves in the future. We're keeping tabs on you and reporting back. But thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you, Jamie, for the lovely opportunity and the lovely questions. Appreciate it.